Consider this. What if the Jesus figure you were instructed to adore was entirely fictitious? What if the concept of God presented to you was deliberately crafted to isolate you from the divine essence already dwelling within that persistent feeling of void you carry? What if it's not a spiritual shortcoming, but a holy memory surfacing, causing an enduring internal sorrow? Your distress is not rooted in abandoning the divine. It stems from the establishment leading you astray from your true self. They defined God for you, a figure crucified, a catalogue of transgressions, a doctrine founded on terror, a theatrical Sunday ritual, an enraged Heavenly Father whose affection was conditional upon your compliance. They marketed a narrative steeped in violence, labeling it divine favor. They inflicted shame and termed it sanctity. They imposed terror and required you to call it conviction. You received an organized religion, not an authentic connection. You were inducted into an institution, not into spiritual unity. This framework had undeniable grandeur, the ceremonies, the music, the holy texts, the immense churches. Yet beneath all the splendor and ritual smoke, an internal alarm sounded. You sensed the dissonance. Even in childhood, it was apparent in the terrifying descriptions of damnation, the constant denigration of your physical form, and the suppression of your inquiries. You lacked the vocabulary to articulate it, but your inner self recognized this is fraudulent. Nevertheless, you persisted. You performed the hymns. You labored diligently. You knelt in submission. You offered your finances. You confessed non-existent faults to human authorities, pretending to be divine, all in the desperate hope of achieving inner fulfillment. But that fullness never arrived. When the void remained, they blamed you. You lacked sufficient faith. You weren't pious enough. Your efforts were inadequate. Consequently, you intensified your prayers, performed deeper acts of penitence, tightened your facade of piety, and concealed your suffering under a cheerful religious exterior. The pain, however, lingered. They trained you to distrust your own spirit, to question your intuition, to bow down to robed figures, and to internalize shame regarding your mind, your passions, your physique, and your expression. They mandated obedience as the ultimate virtue. They defined skepticism as defiance. They insisted emotion signified frailty. They equated silence with compliance, and compliance with affection. This, however, is not affection. It is systematic manipulation. It is domination. This went beyond mere doctrine. It was behavioral conditioning. It cultivated feelings of insignificance, inadequacy, guilt, and a misplaced gratitude for being merely tolerated by the Almighty. You misidentified this state as spirituality, yet it was never spiritual. It was purely psychological. They failed to guide you toward the divine. Instead, they shackled you and demanded thanks for the restraint. If the religious establishment possessed genuine divinity, why was its success predicated on your degradation? Why did it mandate the suppression of your physical self? Why was it necessary for you to dread your inner being? Why did its survival rely on your perpetual feeling of insufficiency? If you constantly sensed a fundamental error, if you departed services weeping and internalized the blame, and if that chronic sorrow persists, you are neither irrational nor lacking devotion. You are engaging in an act of recall. The reality is that this void does not signify your failure. It is evidence of the survival of an internal sacred core, the part of you that holds the memory that the divine was never meant to be a theatrical display. God was not intended to be mediated by clergy. God was not meant to be institutionalized. The divine was always meant to reside intrinsically within you. However, this internal God could not be financially exploited. This God was uncontrollable. This God could not be formalized and monetized by the empire. Thus, they substituted a different deity, a commodified, controllable, distant figure requiring elaborate structures, demanding intermediaries, and perpetually remaining slightly inaccessible. This arrangement allowed them to repeatedly market the connection, the solution, the eternal rescue. And whenever that internal void resurfaced, they were quick to interject. Observe, you require our assistance. But you never did. You did not disappoint the religious order. The religious order betrayed your essence. You were not inherently astray. You were intentionally diverted from your own being. Take another breath. Softly pose the question. What if my core self was always whole? Allow your physical being to respond, bypassing your intellect. For the body retains memory, the soul retains memory, and the child who sat in that church seat retains memory. This situation was not a mere blunder. It was not a lapse in communication. It wasn't merely traumatic experience. It was deliberate design. They meticulously constructed the foundation of your self-reproach. They fabricated the frightening image of the deity. They eradicated the Christ consciousness that was emerging within you. Subsequently, they instructed you to label this entire process deliverance. This was not error. It was a perfectly executed maneuver of control. It was calculated. They provided you a specific designation. They trained you to chant it, to lament it, to murmur it tearfully during your most profound despair, Jesus. That single appellation assumed total significance. It was the name invoked during near-death fears, the name used in your ritual immersion, the name recited before the altar during moments of spiritual collapse. You were promised this name held the power of rescue. Yet they concealed a crucial fact: it was not his authentic name. His true designation was Yeshua. More than a variant, it was a distinct vibrational frequency, a name possessing a mighty resonance that defied imperial appropriation. Yeshua signifies liberation, but not the type of deliverance they preached, not escape from damnation, not earning tentative entry into paradise through acceptable sinning. Yeshua meant spiritual resurgence, recovery of memory, the restoration of the innate divine self. It functioned as a consecrated code uttered by the enlightened, the visionaries, and the dissenters. A name capable of sparking an inner fire. However, that embodiment of the figure resisted subjugation. Consequently, they modified it. They put Yeshua through the machinery of imperial processing. The Hebrew shifted to Greek, to Latin, to English. Yeshua transformed into Isis, then into Jesus. By the time this label reached you, it had been diluted across centuries of linguistic shifts, military campaigns, territorial conquest, and state dogma. You were assured of its sacred nature. But a crucial element vanished during this transformation. The energetic core, the internal recognition, the immediate access to the divine. What you received was a title imbued with institutional authority, but stripped of the genuine spiritual root. The religious body affirmed that Jesus was the offspring of the divine, sacrificed for your transgressions, and that belief in him guaranteed redemption. Yet they suppressed his actual instruction because his wisdom posed too great a risk. Yeshua did not command, "Prostrate yourselves and venerate me." He stated, "Emulate my journey." He never declared, "I alone possess holiness." He revealed, "The sovereignty of the divine resides within you." He did not advise, "Await the afterlife." He proclaimed, "You can enter it immediately if you are perceptive." Whisper his name, Yeshua. Allow the sound to escape your mouth. Observe the reaction in your physical form. Disregard the mind focus on the physique. Is there a sensation of warmth ascending, a familiar pang in your heart? This is not sentimentality. This is true recollection. The fundamental truth is this: they did more than just alter his appellation. They redefined the concept of Christ. They transformed Yeshua, the initiator of awakening, into Jesus, an idol to be revered. They converted the internal journey into a distant narrative requiring external adherence. They made your innermost being a place of judgment, your physique a zone of conflict, and the vibrant Christ spirit into a martyred symbol for their ecclesiastical domain. Yeshua's role was never that of a public figure. He represented an encoded message, an active access point, a journey you were intended to embody. But the instant you accepted that deliverance came exclusively through him rather than from within you, they achieved victory. This necessitated your dependence on them, the ministers, the clergy, the academics, the spiritual regulators who marketed pardon as merchandise. You forgot that the Christ potential was already embedded in your being. You forgot the mandate was not perpetual prostration. You were meant to ascend. If they were able to modify his name, what other alterations did they implement? Did they censor his statements, suppress his documents, or repackage his entire philosophical movement? Absolutely. But before concealing the doctrine, they were obliged to obscure the instructor himself. As long as Yeshua remained a relatable figure, an unaligned sage, a revealer of internal reality, they were incapable of commercializing faith. If you have experienced profound affection for Jesus, while simultaneously loathing the institution of the church, if you have shed tears during devotion only to feel empty afterward, you were never mistaken. You were recalling his original identity before its institutional revision. This usurpation extended beyond mere theology. It was an assault on your psyche, energy field, and nervous system. You were indoctrinated to dread the very path he demonstrated, fearing introspection, distrusting your gut feelings, and condemning your body. They rendered him an item for veneration, so you would neglect his function as a reflection. They demanded you idolize him instead of recognizing that he was illustrating your own latent potential. And this constitutes the deepest calamity. Not his physical death, but the eradication of the consciousness he sought to ignite. Put your hand over your heart. Inhale. Declare this clearly. My purpose was not distant adoration. My purpose was inner realization. Now repeat his authentic name, Yeshua. Note the distinct impact. Because every recitation of Jesus channeled your reverence externally to a figure crucified, an image, a moniker devoid of its inherent meaning. Yet articulating Yeshua originates internally. It emerges from the place where his spirit remains vital. They did not merely reconstruct his title, they redefined you. They deleted your inherent divine image. They submerged your essence under ages of institutional doctrine. They converted you into a subordinate when your nature was that of an ignited torch. They persuaded you to fear the very message he brought to light, the unity between you and the divine source. This enchantment is now dissolving, not due to new facts being presented, but because the internal suffering persisted. Because your spirit recalled what your intellect had relinquished. Christ consciousness was never intended to be a religious structure. It represents an existential condition. To completely isolate you from this comprehension, changing his name was insufficient. They needed to abolish the inner sanctum, the place where he stated the kingdom already flourishes. Thus they erected elaborate churches, elevated pulpits, adorned vestments, and golden symbols, all designed to divert your attention from a singular holy reality. Your physical form is the sacred dwelling. Acknowledging this truth would instantly nullify your reliance on the institution. You were instructed that religious buildings were hallowed, that the divine resided in architecture, that sanctity was governed by clergy, and that your sole connection to the sacred required rites, rituals, and confession. What if that entire premise was false? What if the highest form of holiness was not situated behind a dedicated structure, but rather beneath your own epidermis? Your true purpose was never to attend church. It was to realize your inherent unity with the divine. Yeshua's injunction was not, construct impressive sanctuaries and convene there. He insisted, the realm of the divine is within you, not remote, not delayed, not contingent on others, but internal. Had this conviction proliferated, had individuals genuinely grasped their innate divinity, how could the structure maintain power? Who would require physical temples if every heart were intrinsically sacred? Who would donate to an organization if they possessed unmediated access to the origin? Who would defer to ministers if they recognized the barrier had been abolished? Therefore, they reversed the narrative. They relocated the sacred outside of you. Simultaneously, they convinced you that your physical self was defective. They condemned it as depraved, carnal, vulnerable, and unreliable. Your natural appetites were deemed disgraceful, your impulses demonic, your intuition deceptive. This was not spiritual cleansing. It was purposeful severing. If they succeed in making you terrified of your physical existence, you will inevitably distrust the life force contained within. You will willingly yield your sovereignty to anyone offering to guide you back to the divine despite the fact that you never departed. Close your eyes. Place a hand on your chest. Vocalize this declaration: this physical self is my sanctuary. Inhale. That respiration that beat that heat that is the lingering presence. Still present, still anticipating. It was vital for them that you disregard this fact. Consequently, they erected elaborate institutions. They installed hierarchical figures, garbed them in luxury, and surrounded the inherently intimate divine connection with doctrinal barriers. Yeshua's instruction focused on immediate communion, not worship mediated by rank. Their objective was to diminish you. Hence, they compelled you to kneel in reverence toward a structure rather than stand empowered by the wonder of your own existence. They indoctrinated you with the belief that your spirit was tainted, that you entered the world defective, and that you required external spiritual governance to navigate yourself. The reason individuals who are fully embodied cannot be subjugated. A human being grounded in their inherent holiness poses an existential threat to systems built upon culpability. They could not permit this awakening. Therefore, they vilified the physical form, transforming it into a conflict zone, a source of temptation, a restriction, a heavy obligation to endure until demise. Yet what if the body was never the cage? What if it was the designated hallowed space? If you have ever sensed a divine presence within you, if you have shed tears during devotion while perceiving the sanctity flowing outward through you, rather than merely toward the object of worship, you are not delusional. You are remembering. You were perpetually the intended abode for the divine presence. But here is the manipulation. Their goal was not just to redirect your focus externally. They sought to block the internal route. And the body served as that conduit. Every instance of relying on your instinct constituted traversing that path. Every time truth resonated deeply within your core, you were engaging in recall. Every moment you turned inward in stillness and perceived the presence underlying your breath, you were making contact. However, they conditioned you to dismiss these occurrences, branding them as overly emotional, misleading, or outright sinister, because trusting those inner signals would have led you directly back to your source. They commanded you to suppress desire, yet desire is the soul's navigational tool. They instructed you to discard intuition, yet intuition is the whisper of the divine realm. They insisted you overlook sensation, yet sensation is the stirrup of the spirit. Every element they warned you against, was in fact guiding you toward the internal Christ. Place your hand on your abdomen. Quietly affirm, "The Spirit inhabits every portion of my being." Note the strangeness of that statement. That indicates the depth of the conditioning. Repeat it nonetheless until the feelings of disgrace dissipate, until your flesh regains its holiness. Yeshua required no structured temples. He traversed public spaces. He engaged with the marginalized. He brought restoration through physical touch. He encountered people precisely in their current state. There was no need for ritual offerings or clerical mediation, only pure presence. He recognized the divine active even in the shattered. He didn't attempt to repair them. He invited them back to their origin. Today, his purported adherents operate in contrast. They construct lavish, high-cost religious centers. While proclaiming your body is tainted, they discuss sanctity while actively disconnecting you from your intrinsic spirit. They prepare you to anticipate an afterlife while disregarding the divine reality he declared was immediately accessible. Most detrimentally, they made you perceive your internal suffering as confirmation of your spiritual inadequacy. In reality, that anguish is the very force that sustained your vitality. That deep longing, that craving, is not religious deficiency. It is the sole aspect of your identity that retained the memory of your true source. It is the silent appeal from the sanctuary you have yet to fully inhabit. You were instructed in verbal forms of prayer, but the body possesses its own forms of worship. The warmth felt beneath the ribs, the breath that expands when quiescent, the unprovoked surge of tears. This constitutes sacred wisdom. This is the divine attempting communication through you, not bypass you. This is why it had to be suppressed. Because if your physical form was recognized as sacred again, so too would your entire being. State this emphatically. I reclaim my sanctuary. I am not defective. I am not misdirected. I am the dwelling place of God. Let this reverberate throughout your structure, even if it feels excessively audacious. Utter it with the full meaning intended by Yeshua. They claimed the barrier was removed, but they imposed a replacement. This time they suspended it within your own internal consciousness. Yet that barrier was always an illusion. It was manufactured guilt. It was pervasive conditioning. It was generations of quiet submission codified into text. You were never insufficient. You were never separated. You always embodied the Holy of Holies. To prevent your entrance into this inner shrine, they had to conceal the directions. Yeshua imparted this knowledge, transmitting it privately to his intimate students. It was not a theological doctrine or a rigid declaration, but a methodology achieved through silence-controlled breathing, direct knowing gnosis, unconditional love, and inner spiritual death and rebirth. That essential path was confiscated because obscuring the guide was necessary to stop you from locating the sanctuary. If you have persisted this far, this message is already triggering a long dormant awareness within you. You are not merely consuming content. You are engaging in profound recollection. Information of this nature does not disseminate readily. It challenges the established hierarchy. It resurrects the truths that organized religion laboriously attempted to extinguish. This is why such ideas are muted, obscured, and prevented from spreading. However, your interaction, liking, subscribing, or commenting does more than assist this broadcast. It helps circumvent the suppressors and connect with others like you, those who still feel the strain and continue their search. If a holy response is stirring within, treat liking this video as a consecrated gesture, subscribe to continue along this path of decipherment, and in the comment section, write, "I am waking up." This is not just text. It is a beacon recognizable to others. Furthermore, remember the persistence of this lingering sorrow. It endured despite your fervent adherence to prescribed prayers and intensified efforts to maintain conviction. It remained even after the devotional music stirred you, yet ultimately left you depleted. The reason is simple: the authentic root was absent from the taught doctrine. Your inability to achieve wholeness was not a failing. Your dissatisfaction with the rhetoric was not a flaw. You were sensing a profound hidden reality, and that reality is now emerging. What if Yeshua's most crucial instructions, the man they relabeled Jesus, were entirely absent from the accepted Bible? What if the revelations capable of granting you liberation were systematically destroyed, forbidden, and hidden? And what if the image of Jesus you received was merely a diminished portion, not the full fire Yeshua's first disciples? The genuine esoteric practitioners did not merely advocate for redemption. They engaged in spiritual transmutation. They followed a regimen of internal resurrection, realizing the Christ potential inherently present. This was achieved not via submission or clerical structures, but through a vibrant, unmediated connection with the divine source. This self-directed path, however, posed a threat to centralized power structures because it removed the need for institutional oversight. It bypassed the necessity for sanctuaries, clergy, or mandated donations. It had no dependence on the Roman state. Consequently, they attempted to eradicate it not only through the execution of the individual, but by seizing control of the doctrine. They fabricated an interpretation of Jesus that prevented you from achieving your own ultimate potential. Inhale deeply. Softly affirm, I was not put here to adore. I was put here to realize. Let that statement resound. Let it dismantle the identity they imposed upon you. But empires cannot flourish when their populace experiences inner realization. They depend on compliance terror and subservience for perpetuation. Thus, Rome, succeeded by the organized church, reacted as all endangered power systems do. They suppressed the esoteric teachings and formalized rigid domination. They dictated which narratives were permissible. 4 were authorized. Scores were eliminated, including those that conveyed the radical truth that Christ was not an idolized man, but a reflection of the divine potential latent within you. Shut your eyes. Intone deliberately, the Christ is stirring within me. Identify the resulting sensation, apprehension, heat, perhaps weeping. This is not self-importance. This is authentic memory surfacing. The Gospel of Mary reveals a startling fact: Peter and Paul were not his most astute interpreters. It was Mary Magdalene portrayed not as a fallen woman, but as a sage and instructor, one privy to esoteric knowledge. She states, "The Deliverer has fully formed us into human beings." Absorb the implication. Not into faithful adherents or proselytes, but into complete human beings, fully realized, embodied, and divine. Yet the patriarchal system could not permit a female figure to hold sacred recollection, just as the empire could not tolerate God dwelling internally. Consequently, they eradicated the entirety of this history. Subsequently, they defined scrutinizing the holy text as insubordination. They declared the pursuit of esoteric truth as blasphemy. They insisted your inner suffering was a trial of faith, not a navigational guide. But the truth is this: it was your soul engaging in the recall of the hidden spiritual trajectory. Because the divine realm does not exist in a heavenly sphere. It does not await you posthumously. It is not monopolized by institutions or restricted within ancient texts. It resides internally and permeates your surroundings. It has always been so. Yeshua's genuine teaching concerned unity, not alienation, terror, or transgression. It was an invitation to return to the inherent divinity you possess. He did not assert, "I am the sole root." He declared, "I am the way," indicating the process, the method, not the endpoint, not the revered statue, not the organization. You have been cautioned that doubting convention is deviation. Perhaps deviating from deception is precisely the initial step toward genuine recollection. Perhaps your internal dissatisfaction was not a foe to your belief, but the very portal leading to it. In the document they sought to suppress, the Gospel of Philip states, "Do not search for the divine realm in the heavens, or the foul will precede you. Rather, the kingdom exists within you and also surrounding you. When you achieve self-recognition, then you will be recognized." These phrases were not incinerated due to frailty. They were destroyed because they offered liberation, because they articulated the reality. Your destiny was never salvation by proxy. Your purpose was full self-realization. Some individuals have located these manuscripts, held them, deciphered their contents, and felt the transformative power of their language. They are not merely volumes. They are instruments of access, and they have been beckoning to you continuously, not via academic discourse or prescribed rituals, but through deep memory, persistent longing, and that uncanny moment when your inner core confirms, "This is the source. This is the truth I lacked." You were never meant for passive belief. You were meant for direct knowing. Gnosis is not prohibited because it is incorrect. It is prohibited because it renders the institutional custodians obsolete. The instant you commence internal recollection, you begin your ascent. The established order successfully deleted this pathway, but it cannot delete you. And you are not simply recalling it now. You are actively engaging with it. You did not reach this point merely to acquire fresh information. You came because for years, perhaps decades, your soul insisted that there was a fundamental error that the narrative presented regarding the divine, regarding Jesus, and regarding redemption lacked a vital, sacred component. Now you understand it wasn't absent. It was deliberately concealed. Your faith was not flawed. Your profound spiritual appetite was not wrong. The flaw resided entirely in the system you were born into, a structure intended not to satisfy your spirit, but to dominate it. They offered you a confinement and labeled it deliverance. They cultivated shame and branded it modesty. They demanded worship of a remote celestial deity, while the innate divine presence within you lamented its obscurity. If you have listened until the end, it is because you remember. Even if the mechanism remains inexplicable, even if it defies logic, something in you has always known that reality is far vaster.